11th is on its way. Let's talk about what we know. Welcome to Tattoo Tabletop. My name is James, and today we're just talking about some of the things that have come out with 11th and some of my thoughts on it. So, obviously, there's a whole subcon like conversation that's going on about all of it. We know a little bit more. We know that objectives are no longer, a single thing with little circles around them. So there's also probably a good bunch of those objective marker creators that are feeling pretty crappy. It does look like the templates are changing. I actually did a battle report yesterday as of time of recording, and they were able to actually take the templates that they had, which were not the mats, not the actual like mouse pad type, and they were actually able to like trim them up to actually create the correct dimensions for all the new ones. So keep that in mind. Maybe take a look at how you might be able to figure out some of that as well. So obviously we have the objectives changing into the terrain features, which I do kind of think is actually a good idea. It does seem to have more of a narrative punch to it, fighting over an actual objective in terms of like an actual physical item. That kind of makes sense. It will be very interesting based on the layouts that we've seen, because sometimes the center objective is the really really big piece, which means that there's a chance that there's going to be a big rush to the center with a lot of big blobs of units, probably something that's got to be thrown in there with like high OC and stuff like that. But otherwise, it's just going to be a lot of fighting there. One thing I will say, based on the layouts as well, we are looking at a stronger focus of melee. Melee seems to be a much bigger play, just because of the fact that the terrain layout seems to be blocking a little bit better line of sight, and we also have different shooting rules. Right now, if your unit is wholly within cover and they haven't shot or anything, they're not visible unless they're within 15 inches. So it's going to force a lot of shooting armies that have to get in closer, have to close the gap. So I am really curious to see how they shake out for shootier armies like Tau, like Guard, even like Votann. Votann do have some fisticuffs in there, but for the most part, they would like to just shoot you and not have to fight you, especially since, the big changes from like the original Leagues of Votann book, where there was an entire like warrior, like I think it's the Cronus hegemony that's like particularly warrior focused, and they actually gave it like a fist kind of punch. They just completely did away with that. I mean, you can throw warriors into a fight, you will lose in like 30 seconds flat. It's really bad. I really hope that warriors get a little bit of an upgrade so that they're not just gun wielding, or at least have some sort of fist punch, because especially if you're a toughness 5, um, we're seeing orcs shift to have sluggas, choppas, and shootas. They're going to have all three, so it'd be kind of cool to see something like that for the Leagues of Votann for like those warriors, because they're warriors. If they do is like pew pew and punch, and it's like a pillow for a toughness 5 unit, doesn't seem to match. But I digress. So I think that this edition we're also looking at a little bit more melee as well. The other big change that we'll kind of talk about just on this video, again, we're not going to dive into too many details. I'm sure there'll be more that'll come out by the time that this video is actually posted. So there you go. Just keep an eye on Warhammer Community for that. But the other big one is based on what army detachment that you're playing, etc. You're going to be doing different things. So they talked about kind of how some of it might line up. So, for example, if you're playing World Eaters, your World Eaters' primary mission is going to be killing, right? That's your army, that's your objective, that's what you do. If you're playing against Raven Guard, they're probably doing reconnaissance, I think, is one of the other groups for it. So that's going to be their focus. And then based on you two getting paired up, you play whatever mission falls within here. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to find out, and I do not envy the TOs that are going to be running some of the very first tournaments to try and figure that out, because I'm just going to throw this out there as well. Tournaments can be really, really fun. I thoroughly enjoy them. I have a great time with them. However, there have been tournaments that I have been to that have been really difficult to work with. And what do I mean by that? Well, I've gone to tournaments where, they tell you the layouts, they tell you the missions and everything. But then when you get there, your very first match, round one, you get your pairings, they send you off, they're like, clock is running. And all they did was set out the mat and all the terrain is just off to the sides and you had to assemble the table. Get it? It happens, it comes up. But on the very first round, and especially when during that whole time you're trying to like rush to get this table all set up and you're just like, oh, by the way, my army also does this and it also does this and I have this unit which has this ability and it does. You're just going to be distracted, you're going to make mistakes, they're going to make mistakes, and it's just going to create a bad time. So I'm hoping that even though I appreciate the little extra layers of crunch, the extra, flavor crunches in this edition, I am hoping that we're going to find a way to keep the time down on those. I mean, when you're going to a tournament and, for example, Adepticon just passed, you played 4 games in a day. That would kill me. But if you're doing your normal GT, you're usually playing 3 games a day and then 3 games the next day, maybe. And if it's a super major, you have more on top of that. If you're having to go through this entire process setting up the train and then also have to go like, all right, well, I'm playing world leaders and I have this group and I'm playing this and I have this group. Okay, let's cross check okay, so you have this one, I have this one. Okay, so if we just line these up here, okay, we're playing this mission. That's what I'm talking about. I don't want there to be extra kind of wasted time on that. You should be able to hopefully just show up, have a lineup, have a layout, have it set up so that you can start diving into your rules, your stratagems, all that other stuff. And then I think that hopefully that can keep that up, because tournaments are a very long day. They can be a very fun day, but they can be a very, very long day. Your knees are going to hurt. Your joints are going to be sore depending on the space that you're in. There's all other sorts of stuff. This is the last thing that we need to worry about on top of that. That being said, the other part that I'm also kind of interested in to see how it turns out, detachments. Apparently, you can take multiples. So certain detachments cost certain points. So maybe something like Gladius is going to cost the full 3, and then it just so you can only take the 1 detachment. You can only take Gladius. But it's also going to be interesting that you can take multiple detachments, and I think they said it applies to your entire army. So I'd imagine certain stratagems there's going to be like mounted or Terminator or what have you. But I am curious to see how that shakes out as well. But let's just dive into this little bit of it as well. Most a lot of people have always asked the question, why do the rules need to change every 3 years? And the truth is, they don't. Not if you don't want to, at least. If you don't want to play any of the updated editions, you really don't have to. You have the old rulebook, you know how they play, you can just do that. That being said, if you're using something like the Games Workshop app or anything like that, obviously those are going to get updated. They're going to change to 11th. They're going to move on to the next thing. And in my humble opinion, strike me down if you must, I tend to like new rules every 3 years. I'm actually okay with the 3 year marks. Every once in a while, you get to a game where you're like, okay, well, I just started getting into this. I just started figuring this out. Now it's going to another edition, and some people see that as a negative. For me, I kind of take it as a, okay, well, if I'm just getting into this, I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to learn this, because by the time I finish painting this, it'll be another edition or something like that. So I do look into things of that nature. But otherwise, I think 3 years is a good change. I think it's a good time to shift things up, especially by this point. They usually have achieved a pretty decent balance. I think 40K has done a pretty good job maintaining its balance through 10th. There was a couple times where obviously it skewed out of whack, but for the most part, I think they've actually done a pretty good job keeping it pretty balanced, feeling pretty fair. There's always a couple bad matchups, but I do think genuinely there are ways to work around it. You just have to figure out the right route. I am excited for 11th. Let me know what you think down in the comments down below. Are you excited about the changes? Are you hesitant about the changes? Or are you a brand new player who's looking at 10th and asking yourself, do I want to jump in on this edition? One of the things that I'm probably going to do in an upcoming video is I'm going to create a tier list of beginner friendly armies. So that way, if you're trying to get a head start in 10th to be set up for 11th, I can hopefully provide you a couple answers there. But until next time, again, if you like this content, feel free to like, share, subscribe. Massively appreciate it. But I guess if you got something, you go paint something.